Have you ever experienced something that felt impossible to explain? May it be a strange coincidence, a missing moment in time, or a bizarre event that made you question reality itself, as if you had witnessed a tear in the fabric of existence. Glitch in the Matrix are fascinating stories because they blur the line between logic and the unexplained, making us wonder whether reality is truly as stable as we believe it to be. After scouring Reddit for some of the most chilling and thought-provoking accounts, here are 5 Glitch in the Matrix stories that will have you question reality. The first story comes from user Gimme the Light Man and was posted 9 years ago in the subreddit Glitch in the Matrix. I think I time traveled back to 1991. Let me begin by saying I was born in 1998, so this is by far the weirdest experience I've had. I'm not much of a dreamer, but when I do dream, it's usually very lucid and memorable. I had a dream that my mother was alone in an old, really poor-looking house with my newborn sister and was waiting for my dad to get home. It was dark out, and my mother was anxious waiting at the door, hoping my father would show up. The house was a one-room structure with only 4 or 5 candles illuminating it. I was casually talking to my mother saying it's all okay and just reassuring her that everything is okay. Suddenly, my mother looked at me and was thanking me for being with her while she was alone and for protecting her. The next thing I know, I wake up. I thought it was an odd dream, but didn't think much of it after I showered and went to work. Fast forward 3 days, it's a Friday night and my parents and I are outside in my front yard, sitting around a fire talking. My parents began to joke about how my mother used to pop my father's bike tires when they lived in Mexico. My parents are Mexican and came to the US in '95. I ask what's the story behind that, and they begin to explain to me that when my sister was born in 1991, they lived in an old shack in a poor part of a small town in Mexico for a year. My father had the habit of going out on his bike with friends to drink and not coming home until the next morning. My mother would pop the tires on his bike so he wouldn't leave. I laughed and didn't think much else until they continued on about it. My mother said she'd be terrified of being home alone in the tiny home because they lived in an alley, known as El Callejón de la Llorona, which translates to Alley of the Weeping Woman. For those unfamiliar, the Weeping Woman is an urban legend in Mexico about a ghost woman who roams areas of Mexico and even parts of the US weeping for her missing kids. So naturally, an alley named after the ghost is going to be terrifying. My mother continued on saying how terrified she was in that house alone and would wait, praying for my father to come home. My father then made a joke saying something along the lines of, "Why did you want me there? You claimed your guardian angel was protecting you." At this point I thought, okay, what the hell? So I asked my mom more, and she told me that one night she was visited by a man who seemingly came out of the wall, but she felt comfort and familiarity around him. He sat and spoke to her, reassuring her it's okay, before the man seemingly walked back into the wall. My mother said that after this, she felt a strong calmness around and was no longer afraid of being there. This tripped me out considering that I was born in '98 and I had never heard a thing about my mother's story until after I had that dream. I'm not sure if it's just a coincidence or if it's something more complex. The next story comes from user Leapet, who told about a mysterious experience their grandparents had in the 1940s. My grandparents have both passed quite a few years ago, but one of the stories that they told me has stuck with me all these years. Grandpa and Grandma were driving through Pennsylvania to an old family farm. The farm belonged to his uncle and cousins who lived there. Grandpa was a city kid and had visited the farm every summer for years as he was growing up. It was around 25 years since he had been, but he loved that farm and wanted to introduce Grandma to his cousins and show her around the farm. As they drove closer to the farm, Grandpa began to tell Grandma about the little town that was on the road on the way to the farm. Soon after, they reached the little town, and Grandpa was amazed that it hadn't changed a bit. Towards the end of town, they saw that a hotel was on fire. The road was blocked by firemen, using an old-fashioned fire wagon with a water tank pulled by horses. They thought it was strange, but they chalked this up to being in rural Pennsylvania. Eventually, the water wagon moved, and they could drive on. They reached the farm, and after greeting Grandpa's uncle and cousins, they shared the news of the fire at the hotel. Grandpa suggested that they all go down to see if they could help. The relatives looked shaken. That's when one of the cousins explained that there was no town, not anymore. About 20 years before, the hotel burned down, and the fire spread to most of the small town's main street. After their businesses were lost, people left the town. In fact, the uncle and cousins were the last people living in the area. Grandpa and Grandma couldn't believe it. They had just seen the town, the fire, even smelled the smoke. Grandpa and Grandma and some cousins got in the car and drove back to town, going back the same way they came. And the town was gone, just some burnt-out shells of a few buildings remained. The third story is from user out of H2G2 references and recalls a memory of how his father had prevented him from breaking the space-time continuum. As a child, my parents always introduced me to everyone that ever came to our house. I was taught to shake hands and say, "Hi, I'm John Doe, what is yours?" This was a rule that could not be broken. One night when I was 7 or 8, I had a bad dream about being old. I went out to the living room to talk to my dad, who always used to play with Legos with me when I had a bad dream. This particular time, we got the Legos out, but there was a man in a chair. I went to introduce myself, and to my surprise, my dad shooed me away, got out my Legos, and proceeded to talk to the man instead of play with me. The man and my father talked for some time about things I don't understand, and neither say a word to me. It was weird, but I was young and the Legos were fun. I forgot the whole thing and went to bed. I never thought about it again. And then fast forward to 12 years. I head to bed one night after having a beer or two with some friends and immediately started lucid dreaming. In the dream, I am sitting in a chair talking to my dad about what I have done with my life. He is happier than usual and very interested. In the distance, I hear a young person calling for him. He gets up and walks out of the room and returns a minute later with a younger version of me and a box of Legos. The child version of me approaches me, but my dad shoos him away. Young version of me goes away and plays with Legos. My dad and I commence to talk about the danger of the butterfly effect and how everything could change if we spoke. He insists we wait until young me falls asleep to continue talking about the future. I then have 2 more similar dreams where I see myself from perspectives of mysterious forgotten people and situations. These dreams were all with my father, all discussing time travel, my future life, and the consequences of changing things. I woke up absolutely convinced I had time traveled. It took me a week to rationalize it, and still gives me the willies just typing it out. Story number 4 is from user Red Rubber Pony. The story is about a weekend getaway, but neither she nor her friends could recall the details. This happened when I was 19, and I'm 27 now. At the time, I was still dating my high school boyfriend, Alan. He lived 2 towns away from me, but we spent every weekend together. My best friend named Jill had also been friends with Alan since middle school, so we were all very close. Jill and I worked together at a medical supply factory, and we would occasionally come up with some great adventures to go on the weekends. One time, we had made plans to drive out to Alan's place after work on Friday. We would spend the night there, then get up and go on our adventure Saturday morning. Friday rolls around. Jill and I get off work and swing by our apartment to pick up our guitars and backpacks for our sleepover. We drive out to Alan's place, start cooking up our frozen pizzas, and bust out the guitars and Xbox. We play and talk and eat till around midnight, then decide we should get some sleep for our trip in the morning. Alan had a futon in the living room that Jill slept on, while Alan and I went to his room on the other side of the living room. We all said goodnight to each other and went to sleep. Saturday morning, we all get ourselves ready and get into Alan's 1992 baby blue Ford Taurus. Then it got weird. We backed down the driveway, with Alan driving. Then the next thing any of us remember, Jill and I are backing down Alan's driveway, in her car, having just returned from our day, and it was 6:30 p.m. We were both smiling, and Jill looked at me and her face fell. She looked me dead in the eyes and asked me what had just happened. It took a second for my feeling of euphoria to clear, like I just had a really good dream, but then I realized that I couldn't remember where we'd all went after backing down Alan's driveway that morning. We pulled back into Alan's and went to see what he had to say. We knocked at the door, and when Alan opened the door, we knew he'd had the same reaction as us. He was pale and wide-eyed and just mumbled out, "Do you guys remember what the hell happened?" None of us did. We sat down and went over the details of the night and early morning, over and over. We kept crying and having to stop to console each other, but we could not come up with any details past backing down the driveway. Alan remembered going into his house, but not driving up to it or parking his car. Jill and I don't remember getting into her car or seeing Alan go inside. And also, none of us can recall what the plan for our Saturday adventure was. We know we had a destination and activities planned, but not one of us can recall a single detail about what the plan was. Eventually, we were able to calm ourselves down and just reasoned it must have been an abduction, and that it was no big deal, and that we were all fine. No weird side effects or physical evidence of anything. Through the years, we've brought it up to each other now and then, just a passing thought of how freaking bizarre it is that we still can't recall any other details of that day. Part of what bothers me about it is that how it's become such a nonchalant topic to bring up now, even though it was very traumatizing at the time. We just so willingly fell into calling it our abduction, even though none of us have a clue. The last story is from user Crowhorse. He told about the time he called in sick to work, but had no memory of doing ever so. It happened in early 2000, when I was working at a juvenile detention center in a small town in Oklahoma as a corrections officer. I was working nights at the time and went to work at 9 p.m. One night when I arrived for work, my supervisor looked confused and asked me what I was doing there. I said I worked tonight. He said, "But they said you called in a few hours ago saying that you were sick." I was a bit confused and said, "It must have been someone else and they got the message wrong." I went to work in the control room where I usually work. The control room is the center of the prison that has direct control over the cameras, doors, phones, and everything. I relieved the guard on duty and settled in for the night. I looked at the messages for that shift and saw a message that said I had called at 6:50 a.m. and said that I had gotten sick while out cleaning up after the storm. There had been a storm the night before, and it was a bit bad, but not anything that I had to go out to clean up. It was truly weird. My supervisor named Dave came into the control room about that time. He was also a friend of mine outside work, and we started talking about it and how odd it was. I decided to call my wife at home and tell her about it while he was still sitting there. After 2 rings, a man picked up the phone, and with a raspy voice, the man said, "Hello." I did not know what to say for a few seconds. I looked at the phone to make sure I dialed the right number, and I had. After a few seconds, the person said hello again in the same raspy voice. I said, "Hello, who is this?" "This is Taylor, who is this?" the person said. My head started spinning because my name is Taylor also. I said in almost a scream, "Where is Anne?" He said, "Anne's in bed, who is this?" I dropped the phone and told my supervisor to ring me out. I had to get home and took off towards the door. I could hear Dave pick up the phone behind me and say, "Hello," followed soon after by, "What the hell," rather loudly. I ran to my car and drove home faster than what was legal, with my mind racing the entire time. I busted through the door, and my wife was sitting watching TV and was shocked at me being home. I asked her who was there, and she said no one has been here. After a rather long talk with my wife, I went to call the prison to tell them what was going on, but the phone was dead. I went back to work, and when I came in, Dave was acting weird and asked me, "How the hell are you doing this?" He told me that when I left, he picked up the phone, and the person on the other end sounded like me. He kind of freaked out and hung up the phone. A minute later, as he could see my car leaving the parking lot, he said that I had called back from home and asked what the hell was going on. He said that I was a bit irate and said I was sick and did not feel like playing these games and was telling him to stop prank calling me and hung up. I had to convince him that I had no idea what he was talking about, that it was not me who called him from my home. Later, I find out that the phone line for my area had been knocked down the night before by the storm. This is absolutely the strangest thing that has ever happened to me. Do you have your own glitch in the Matrix story? If you do, feel free to share it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more discussions on the unknown and the unexplained.